Hi, it's Drake Riggs with Obsidian Wisdom. Today we'll be answering the question, what causes inflation? Now, this question has come up a little bit more often, especially when you're talking about long-term financial planning for like retirement or different things like that, where you've noticed if you've been watching the news that maybe a few months ago they were said, you know what, we're at a 30-year high on inflation. And then if you just noticed the past week, they said now we're at a 40-year high on inflation. And so it ends up bringing the question, what is inflation? What do I do as far as protecting myself? And more importantly, like what causes inflation, right? Like who should I be mad at? And so when you're trying to discuss and figure out inflation, we'll start at the beginning. It is definitely considered one of the 5 key risks to financial planning, whether you're talking about your retirement or any sort of long-term planning, if you have legacy and generational wealth, things like that. It is why we can't just put money in a mattress and leave it there, because there is a risk of inflation. There are 3 types of inflation. We'll go ahead and start first of all with just what inflation is. Inflation is your purchasing power decreasing, and that's a very fancy way of saying the amount of money it costs me to buy something. That is my purchasing power. That is decreasing, which means it's costing me more. So the value of a dollar is decreasing. There was a time where maybe when I was a kid, I remember us going to the gas station and we would be able to get gas for like 99 cents a gallon. I remember seeing that and I remember being like, oh, okay. And just like that was just what the price of gas was. Not that it was high, not that it was low, that just what the price was. And the price steadily would increase. And that was pretty normal. People weren't very concerned about that. And then when you started getting a little bit further into the 2000s, we noticed that the price of gas started increasing a little bit more exponentially, where it went from maybe like $1.50 to like $3.50. And then we were trying to figure out what was causing that increase. Now we're at a point in time where the gas is starting to increase again, where now nationally gas is about $5 a gallon. And so what is it that causes the gas to increase? And we'll discuss those 3 things that does that. And the same would be true really in any aspect of your financial planning. If you are retired and you are not taking inflation into consideration, you will notice that in every 17 years, they estimate that your purchasing power cuts in half. And that's a very, again, fancy way of saying that it used to cost me $100 to buy something, and in 17 years, it's going to cost me $200 to buy that same exact item, which is very important for you in retirement because you need to maintain your lifestyle. When it comes to what the 3 types of inflation are, the first one is called demand pull, the second one is cost pull, and the third one is just built-in inflation. So demand pull, the first one, that is going to be more when you have the demand for something is so high that the people selling it have to raise their prices, or at least they have the option to raise their prices to meet the demand, because they would just sell out at the price that they have and they only have so much of an inventory. So they decided to increase their price so that they can take advantage of the demand. And some of these that you may have seen is, and I live in Florida, where we may have a hurricane that comes, and you will notice that the price of things like gas and water and different things increases because everyone is buying a bunch of these non-perishable supplies just in case a hurricane knocks out power or has you stuck in like your house or something like that. And so the price of these items goes up because there's so much demand. They're going to sell out of water. They're going to sell out of non-perishable goods. They are going to empty their shelves. And so some people will increase their prices. Now, in the past few years, when we're talking about the pandemic, you may have noticed that with toilet paper. You may have noticed that with sanitizer. You may have recently noticed that with baby formula, where there is this demand for something and we keep seeing that it's running out. So people start selling it for higher prices. And that may start with the business, but sometimes that's people reselling things. Anytime you've been maybe looking at like a basketball championship or like a World Series or a Super Bowl, anything like that, you'll notice the same thing happens where people will buy the ticket and then they can resell the ticket for maybe 10 times the price because there's so much demand. Everybody wants to go to the game, but there's only so much we can sell tickets to. There's a set number of seats in the stadium. You may have even noticed that with collectibles and other things where maybe they stop producing a certain item, and as a result, if you want it, you have to buy it from the set number that's already there. And that's part of the reason that sometimes people do that, where we only have a set number of items. Apple is very famous for that, where Apple could produce enough iPhones to supply the demand that's there, but they do like where people are standing in line and then they know that it's going to run out, so they produce less than what the demand is so that it works in good marketing. Chick-fil-A is maybe another good example of this. You don't see as many Chick-fil-A's as you may see a McDonald's or a Burger King or even like a Starbucks, because a part of Chick-fil-A's branding is you seeing these very long lines and everybody's like, wow, I'm missing out on something. So these are all demand pull inflation, where it gives you the opportunity to increase your prices because you only have a certain amount of items available and there's more people that want them than are available. The second one is cost pull, when you're talking about things that produce inflation. So cost pull is when the cost of the item increases. So in our first example, when we were talking about the price of gas going up, some of that was cost pull, where you were dealing with things like the war and some of the supply of oil was seen as being decreased. And as a result of that speculation, where the price of gas started increasing because people felt like there wasn't enough gas. And then also you have the cost pull, and that's kind of repeating itself in today's times, where we feel like the cost of gas is going up because we're not taking oil from like Russia and different places, so it ends up increasing the cost. You may also see price pulling from the regulatory environment. So if you end up having a higher cost, so let's say maybe it used to be where I can get maybe $50 and then I could pay everybody and get a barrel of oil out, but the government increased regulations, and as a result, I have a little bit more cost. And so now I have to sell my oil at like $60 to be able to make the exact same profit that I did. And sometimes these costs are going to be from the environment, and sometimes these costs are going to be from the supplier. What I mean is, the environment is, if one of your oil wells went empty, well, then you're probably going to have to increase your cost because you have to find a new well to dig in. Maybe it's a further distance well, and so it takes more transportation and logistics to be able to get the same amount of oil to your end market. And so you want to be able to understand that when we're talking about cost pulling, you're basically just saying that the supplies that I needed, it increases. Whether those supplies was driven by human and labor, or whether those supplies were driven by the actual process of me getting it, or even if the supplies are just driven by the overall cost that I'm getting from my other suppliers. Maybe something happened on their end where they increased their prices, and as a result, I had to increase my prices to maintain my same margin. And so that is going to be what your cost pulling is. So it's either going to be a regulatory environment, it's either going to be a more expensive price to be able to get the end result to you. So for example, housing pricing is going up, but they're saying that that has to do with some of the supplies that you need, where lumber is increasing and some of the stones that you would use to make the countertops, that these things are increasing, and so the price of a house increases as a result. And then the third and last one is just built-in inflation. There is a discussion on inflation where each of us are okay, we'll say, with some of the built-in inflation. And so we expect inflation to be about 3% every year. That's what we expect, our prices to go up about 3%. So as a result, we don't always have to see the increase in the prices from the end result, from our end product and who we buy from, because we're not going to just increase all of the prices by 3% every year. There's just a general understanding that, hey, you know what? Prices do go up, and they tend to go up over time. They go up with our wages. And when our wages go up and then the price of something goes up, we maintain the same cost of living. So you may see that if you go to like your promotion meeting, or you're running the company and you give out different incentives and raises, that more times than not, you probably are going to, at a minimum, increase with inflation. That's what most people end up doing. And the reason is because if we don't keep up with inflation, then we're technically taking a pay cut, that our income is decreasing by that same 2 to 3% every year, unless our raises in match at least inflation. And the same would be true for you when it comes to your retirement planning. You want to make sure that at a minimum that you are holding that 3% increase in whatever your portfolio is in a consistent basis. And if you are able to do that, then you're able to maintain the exact lifestyle. And then you won't be blindsided by the cost of your goods going up by double over a 17-year period, right? That's about the time I told you it takes for your purchasing power to be cut in half. So if you increase your purchasing power by 3% every year, then on that 17th year, you will still be able to maintain the exact lifestyle that you had. And so when it comes to inflation, as we discussed, there's three types of inflation. There's the demand pull, which just simply means that there are more people who want something than the product is available or produced. The second one is going to be your cost pull, and that is the cost of the particular item, whether it is to produce it from my supplier or from the regulatory environment, that has increased. And so as a result, I increase my prices. And the third one is built-in inflation. And as we had just discussed, Built-in inflation means that that's what we expect to see. We expect prices to go up about 2 to 3% every year, and usually our wages go up that same percentage. So the overall cost of living hasn't changed for us at all. So in the comments below, go ahead and share what type of inflationary environment that you believe we are currently in, or whether you believe we're in multiple. Maybe you believe there's more than one trigger. And the three choices are demand pull, cost pull, and built-in inflation. Until next time, Wisdomites, remember wisdom is asking the right questions to allow yourself to get the right answers. Keep asking those questions and you will keep getting those answers. Continue blessings.